My name is Marcela. Originally I am from Argentina, but I don't live in Argentina since the last 3 decades. I studied in the US and then I went to, I did my PhD there. I am a multidisciplinary scientist. I am a computer scientist, an ecologist and an engineering all together. Wow. and then I went, so I was in the US for a while studying and then doing my postdoc in California, and then I moved to Germany, and in Germany I added into all this background the social sciences, and I started working with people and in connections to people, and took my work up to the moment has been on issues. So I always work on issues of uncertainties. At the beginning, since I got into Germany, there was uncertainties in models. I could build models. I was working with vegetation models and build models and see how much uncertainty these models have, and how much useful this output could be when you have a lot of uncertainties into that. Sometimes this is something that scientists, we don't like to hear, how much uncertainty, because it's considered as something very negative. Oh, I'm not doing my research very well, it has uncertainty. So I started, since I was doing my PhD, I became very curious with what are we producing here. And so I work on issues of model uncertainties in the output, and then through my PhD I started working on issues of water and how this uncertainty was being. I started working in the connections between the users of the models and the models itself and the value of these uncertainties. And so when I was in Germany, I worked in the context of adaptive water management. And what adaptive water management says is that natural resources, or water resources in particular, had to be managed in an adaptive way, because we have so much uncertainty, we don't know, we cannot control. The management of water historically has been a controlled management. And adaptive says, well, we cannot control anymore. We have kind of to adapt, to create plans that adapt and go as we are discovering new situations. And so this is a little bit, there are a lot of advancements in theory. In practice, we're still trying to control a lot, but climate change now have put us, okay, we cannot control anymore, we cannot predict anymore. And so since then, I started working, I started delving into the humans and the importance of humans into management. So I became a social scientist. I'm not a trained social scientist, but this is what I do. And I have been working with organizational psychologists since then. So I'm incorporating a lot of human factor in my work. And I think that the most important contributions to science I have done was in issues of uncertainties. I have included issues of ambiguities. When you have a problem, we tend to think in uncertainties as a deficit of knowledge, something I don't know, and something that limits my knowing of the world and my control. But what I have said through my work in these last 2 decades is that also when you have a human interpreting and different ways of knowing, as we have different humans and we have different ways of knowing, of being in the world, there is maybe no right or wrong. We have many different valid ways of interpreting and being, and so this also should be taken into account. And so I work mostly with issues of ambiguities. Ambiguities, I take ambiguities in a group, which are those discrepancies that emerge where different peoples have to decide together. So my work, it's in collective decision making under uncertainties, particularly looking at ambiguities.
Thank you. Did you have, if you look back at your childhood and growing up, were there light bulb moments that put you on your path?
Well, I was always interested in diversity. and I always dreamed myself in traveling around and working with different cultures, and somehow this is what I do, and this is what, for me, ambiguity is it's diversity. It's accepting diversity, and so I think it's very connected. My work is very connected also with those ideas. And
would you say landscapes had an effect on you? It was always more about people, kind of from when you were a child or a young person?
I don't know. In terms of landscapes, I always liked to travel.
So you've always thrived on differences, really?
Yes, and I was always interested since a very child on human rights and equity, and I come from a family in which I think there's all these equity things I learned through my father, but I have a super creative mother with a terrible sense of humor. So those two things, those two characteristics, I think marked me a lot. And so there is a lot of creativity in my work that I expressed in these conceptual ways.
Thank you. You know the 5 elements, like water, air, space, fire, earth?
Yes.
We're kind of asking everyone which where they feel their subject fits. So when we talk about it in workshop situations after, we're kind of putting them into different elements. So which element are you most attracted to?
Topically I work with water.
Yeah.
And so that would be the most obvious in the sense of the material thing I deal with.
Yeah.
Although I would say I have a lot of earth in my work, and also a lot of fire in terms of passion or creativity.
Do you feel space as well? I thought space, the way you were talking about diversity.
Space, it's a lot. Actually, one of my last publications, it's called The Space in Between. And I talk about relationships and the importance that relationships have in how we determine what are issues to be
the space
tackled.
Between.
The space in between.
I did an art project called that once.
Say that again?
I wrote a small paper called The Space in Between as an artist. You know.
Okay, then we have to exchange.
It didn't go very far, but yeah, it's a crucial idea.
It is, I think, because it's, when you deal with ambiguities.
Yeah.
So then you have to make decisions about common pool resources. I don't like the word resources here. It's a very controversial word. I'm still using it for the lack of a better word. But we have to make decisions about the common.
Yeah.
And these commons involved all of us. And so far, we could say, well, science is the legitimate knowledge and is what can mediate that. But if we accept there are very different ways of knowing and existing, then science is one more of these ways of knowing. Yeah. And so when you deal with people, then you have to deal with relations. Yeah. And with power relations, with power differentials, that with knowledge co-productions. And this is what many times is missing. The notion of relations and the notions and the quality of these relations, I think it's very important. So in this paper, The Space in Between, I try to bring the importance of the quality of relations, not only of relations in the structural way, who talks with whom or who interacts, but the quality of these relationships.
Do you have like a favourite author, poet or philosopher that has really inspired you over the years? You know.
Oh, many. I'm very existential. I started with Sartre. I love him. I think that my Simone de Beauvoir was the first feminist I read, and I like it. I like a lot Judith Butler, Latour. I like a lot. I like a lot Foucault.
Okay, that's brilliant. That's wonderful. Could you explain your subject as if I was like a 14-year-old or a young person?
Well, my subject, I can explain my last work, my last paper. And this is a collaboration I did with French colleagues from Montpellier. This is a group I work a lot with. And what we're trying to do is to see, to find ways of understanding the role uncertainty has in a group when we make a decision. Uncertainties and those things that we don't know, how much important these things are for making a decisions regarding water. And what we were working on was with games. So we developed several games that simulate situations of water management. And one was, for example, a game in which we had 5 different farmers around a river, and so they could extract water from the river. And so we wanted to see all together how they would, when there were water shortages, what would happen. And so we devised these games, and we ran these games with the students and trying to see when they didn't know how much water they would have, what they would do. And we were interested in knowing if the way in which they related had an effect. And it was very cool because we tested 240 students, and what we found actually was when they related and they knew each other, they pay less attention to the uncertainties and to those things they didn't know. So not knowing something was important when they didn't have contact each other. When they would contact each other and be face to face, not knowing didn't matter much. And I thought that's super cool.
That is super cool. That's amazing. Yeah. But with the kind of sadness in climate change that how does it affect you? Like the prognosis. Do you get sad or?
I think it's. I think what climate change is telling us is that we need to change. And so we could see it as a very catastrophic thing, and this is dangerous because if you see it as something very catastrophic, very negative, you tend to be paralyzed. Like, oh, now, I mean, it has this paralyzing effect. You start being with fear. It's like, okay, I cannot do anything, so I don't do anything. So I try to avoid that thought, and instead, I think it's more positive if I see this, okay, if we reflect on climate change, it's like, okay, what we have done, I mean, we as humans, so it's telling us, okay, we need to change. And we need to change the way in which we behave, we need to change the way in which we think, we need to change the stories we tell, and the stories we live by. And I try to, when I think in my work, also I would say we need to change the way in which we relate. We relate with ourselves, with others, with environment. And I think this could be an opportunity for creating happier institutions, happier ways.
So this leads into a question on what change would you like to see in society and see in individuals?
I would like to see more equity. I would like to have a redefinition of the common, of what is the common and how now we are, I think we are in a crucial times because we may want to continue business as usual with this type of neoliberal economy and try to adjust to the same way of being, and I think this will not lead to anything good. I think we need to have more radical transformations, maybe not change, I would be talking about transformation or metamorphosis. And so I think we need to think seriously in terms of relations, not to be so utilitarian, for example, with environment, and to start creating more being more altruistic, more empathic relationships.
Okay. What do you do for relaxation?
I do a lot of yoga. I do yoga every day.
Wonderful. Yeah. Could you tell me about beauty in your subject? Beauty in uncertainty, for instance. I don't know.
I like some text. I mean, some text I read. Oh, this is beautiful. I think it's beautiful what we found in this last study with the games, that relationships matter. I think that's kind of a beautiful thing. I also like beauty as an aesthetic, so I pay attention to my presentations and things. I kind of like color and things. So